Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to start a new build. This is the Honda CB350F engine. It's a 1974 on this bike. It's the precursor to the CB400F. The difference with those is they have a 6-speed transmission, whereas these only have a 5, and of course the 50 cc's. But otherwise the CB400F is more or less just a big bore with a 6-speed transmission. Anyway, this bike came to me in a basket case, so there's going to be a little bit of figuring out as I go along because a lot of the things weren't labeled. But the first thing we need to do is, this is what also caused this engine its issues, is you can see here, this it's the cam chain tensioner. A common things that happen to these is people don't adjust them, and then they get into the actual, or the cam gets into the tensioner here. Let me see if I can zoom you in real quick. Okay, so you can see here where the cam chain got into the tensioner. So I'm going to take my Dremel with a diamond bit on there and go in there and just clean that stuff up so this rotates easily like it's supposed to before I reinstall it back into the engine. Because on these engines, this is one of the first things you have to do because it pretty much goes under everything. But we'll go ahead and get started with that. Okay, so I got most of the initial shaping done there, so go ahead and move on now. Just clean it up with a wire wheel real quick. Okay, we got that freed up. I'm gonna go tap this rivet back in a little bit. Just kind of straighten it up and we'll be good to go there. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is start putting the crank back in. Luckily, I numbered the bearings when I took it apart, so I know where they go, and I kept them carefully. You can see I marked it 1. I always do numberings from the left side to the right side. So I'm just going to go ahead and start putting these bearings back in. And you can see I have them here 1B, that's 1 bottom, and 1U, 1 upper. I don't know why I went with, that's good for it. But anyway, I'll go ahead and start putting these back in. They just really, this is the upper. It's upside down, so we want that 1U. I'm just going to slip that right in there, like that. And that's really all there is to that. So I'll go ahead and keep working on those and work my way across. So the number on this one's kind of gotten knocked off, but that's okay. We'll go some of the other ones first. So we're looking for that 3U. That's it there. Luckily, this person hadn't split the case yet, so I didn't have to go that far in. It's number 4. There it is. Then the one I couldn't figure out earlier is going to be number 5. 5U. So I put 4B in, or 4U in there. Yep. And there's number 5. Okay. So next I'm going to put a little assembly lube on all these bearing surfaces here. So you're going to try and keep it off of there as much as possible because your case sealer is going to have to go there. So I'll come back and clean it up after this. There we go. That stuff is a mess. So like I said, I'll just go back in here and clean these up. Any that's way too close, because we want to make sure we can get that case sealant in there so we don't have stuff leaking down the bolt holes right here through that path. One note about these older engines is, in a lot of ways, it's more difficult than some of the newer ones. There's a lot more little individual pieces on this one versus some of the more modern engines I've done lately in past episodes. So the next piece that needs to go in is this chain guide right here. I don't remember which one of these it is that was there. I think they're actually identical. Yeah, they're identical because one goes in the bottom case and one goes in this upper case. So one of these is going to go right here. And this is where the figuring out the bolts starts going. So these were all in one together, and I have 4 that are identical, and there's 4 of these. So in that situation, what makes the most sense is there's 4 of them here. So I'll go ahead and work on that assumption and start putting these little bolts in. Just like that. There we go. Okay, so the manual doesn't specify what these need to be torqued to, but it's a safe bet, about 12 Newton meters on these. Okay. So the next thing here is there's an idler wheel that goes right here. I'm not sure if you can see that. I'm gonna go ahead and put that in, so I'm done with it. It's for the starter. It's pretty simple also. It just slides right down in here. It has just a pin that's going to go through with a shaft that's cut out, so there's going to be a bolt that goes in there. It's got to go from this outside here, kind of reach around style. I'll put just a dab of this assembly lube on this right here, where the wheel's going to be riding on it. Okay. So the bolt that's going to go in here is going to be this one that has a little bit of section that's designed to go into that kind of thing. Oh, this one does have a whatever you call this to keep it from getting turned out. So go ahead and put that on and put that one in there and torque it down the same to those other ones. That's the part of the starter drive right there. So I'm going to go ahead and tap these flanges up or bend them up with a pair of pliers real quick. Just like that. And then same thing over here. That way that boy's not going to come out of there. Okay. So up next I'm going to start putting some of the transmission pieces back in, just because that's what makes the most sense after this piece. So the transmission, we got 2 shafts just like normal. It's really pretty straightforward here on this one. It has a pin that goes right here that locates this bearing at the end, kind of just like that. Then it has a one of these half moon retainers that locates the other bearing. So I'll just go ahead and slide this back in there. I'm going to try not to drop it all. Get them in position. There it is. So that's where that goes. Just enough clearance there. So then the counter shaft, or the rear one, goes the same way. We're going to put a new oil seal on here, clean this up a little bit first. And it's going to have a pin here that locates that bearing. Then it'll have a half moon clip over here on this side. I don't know if it's actually called a half moon clip, but that's what I call it. Put a little more assembly lube on that piece there. Man, that's tough every time. I got all these reproduction seals from 4into1.com. They have a great selection for these bikes. So that's going to go just right on there like that. With this bit sticking down. So I'm going to make sure I get that into the hole here at the bottom when I install this. Oh, I know what I forgot down there. The shift drum goes in here below this shaft, so I'll probably go ahead and pull that guy right back out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put a little more of the shifter together. This bearing just simply floats on the shaft, and then there's the end cap that goes on here like this. It has a single 10mm bolt. I will block top this one. It might cause me some pains getting it out later, but it's better than having it fall out in the engine. On the very outside we have this plate, which goes to the shifter mechanism. And then on the inside you'll see a little pin there that indexes into the hole in the shifter here like that. Then it all goes right together. And it just screws together like that. There we go. So I'll go tighten this up in the vise with some soft jaws, and then I can continue on. Okay, so like I showed a minute ago, this just slides right in there into that shaft. So I'll put a little more of that on there and a little bit on that button on the end. That's the neutral switch indicator. This will slide right in there. And there it is. Turns great, so we know it's in right. Then there'll be a plate that keeps it all from moving. It goes in over here. I believe it's this one. Yeah, that's what it is. So, I have to turn this here and hopefully everything won't fall out. So, I don't know if you can see. I can't quite see. Right there, there's a bolt hole. So it has this retainer plate that goes in there right about like that. That also keeps the shaft in. So we got to put that in first. So we have our shifter dogs here. So we've got a, let me go ahead and put all of them but this one back in. We have a right, a center, a left, and a right, center, left. And they're stamped on there. So the engine's upside down, so you know this is the left side, this is the right side. So first we'll start with the left one. It's going to go in just like that and into that slot right there. Right now they're going to fall down because there's nothing holding them. Then, yeah, so this is the right one. So it's going to go in there similar to that left one there. They're going to fall down, but there's nothing we can do about that. And finally, the center one here goes in somehow about like this on this shaft. So, go ahead and start putting those in there. I just put a little light assembly grease on there. So you see it lines up with that hole. This one you may not know which way it can go, but it can only go this way. Also, another easy way to tell is if I can get this one out of here. Oh, there we go. The stampings go to the left. So of course that one's not in all the way yet, so I can't fully put it in there. Alright, let me get a tool on that. There it is. And see how they move? So now I'll go ahead and put this shaft back in here. Now that that's where it's supposed to be. There it is. Then I just got to get those two clips lined back up like they were. And there you see we have it in some gear. So now I'll go ahead and put that cover I was just talking about on there. Goes right here. It has this retainer clip on it and this somewhat large bolt. So this one's going to be a 12 millimeter. So I don't know what the torque is on that yet, so I won't tighten it all the way down.
Okay, so it looks like I lost audio, unfortunately. So the first thing you need to do next is install this seal on the end of the input shaft of the transmission. It's just a flat seal. Up next, we're going to go ahead and install the crank into the engine. The first thing I'm doing is putting on a new timing chain because the old one was messed up. It just slides on. It's a one-piece DID timing chain. The next part is, of course, we need to put new seals into the engine. These are the seals that go on the end of the crank. I got new ones for both sides. A little note about the one on the right side of the camera here. Make sure that the little metal inner part goes on the inside of the crank, and of course I'm going to put a little lubrication on it first. Okay, so the next part, the crank is just going to get set into the crankcase. This engine's pretty easy since it's not a geared crank, so just make sure everything's out of the way and gently set it in there. Make sure the rods go in correctly and it's not binding in the hole or anything like that. And then just set it on those crank bearings. The final part of this is I have to remove the inner part of the stator generator over on the right side of the camera, or the right side of the screen. I didn't have the right puller for this, so I ended up just using some heat and my dead blow to get it off. That way I could put that seal on that goes behind that cover right there. That's about it.
Okay, with a little light persuasion from some heat and the dead blow, I was able to go ahead and get that off so I can put this new oil seal in on this side. It's just going to slide right in there like that. The original one has a lip, but this one doesn't. I don't think that matters really, but that's just the way it was designed. So the last thing to go in on this side is going to be the cam chain tensioner. So the first piece that goes in, it has a... Alright, so saying the first piece to go in is this plunger here. It just sits in this little foot right here on the cam chain and pushes on it. So we're going to need to put this all the way in, but obviously it won't stay down right now. So what we need is this special bolt right here, this kind of double, strange little double bolt thing. That goes down in that hole. So it just simply, you push it down and you put this in, screw it down until it holds it. Right there. So that'll keep that from popping out while I'm trying to put this, the tensioner on. So it's just going to go right down in here like that, kind of under that piece. You can see where it sits right there on that. And then it's going to be these two bolts right here with the number 11s on them. Go ahead and Loctite these. Definitely don't want them coming out. Go ahead and put this other one in. Should move freely there. I'm going to look up the torque of these real quick.